Is BYU looking at other quarterbacks outside of Maealiuaki Smith as part of their 2024 recruiting class? Well, based on an offer issued Sunday night, it very much looks that way.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Cannot appreciate you guys enough for your support of the podcast. Thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU sports and, of course, available wherever you get your podcasts. YouTube as well in the video format. And a big thank you once again for supporting this venture. All right, let's dive right in on today's show and talk about recruiting for BYU's quarterback position going into the 2024 recruiting class. Now, we've talked a lot recently about Maealiuaki Smith out of Sarah High School out there in the Bay Area of Northern California, a guy that I think BYU very much would like to have in their football program. But Sunday night, saw this come across the timeline on social media, most notably Twitter, that BYU has issued a new offer, according to Noah Lugo out of Eaton High School down in the Fort Worth area of Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Eaton High School in the far north part of Fort Worth, but watching his film, pulled up his huddle highlights from his junior film last year, playing for Eaton High School, and I gotta say, just on the highlights alone, Noah Lugo fits exactly what BYU is looking for at a quarterback. Now, Maealiuaki Smith has got ideal size for the position, 6'4", 200 plus pounds, just looks every bit the part of a prototypical quarterback, and obviously has the athleticism that BYU deems necessary, Aaron Roderick most notably, that they want in their offense. Well, Noah Lugo is not that tall. He's 6'1.5" according to 24/7 Sports, weighs 180 pounds. But what I saw from him on film is a guy who's a dynamic athlete. He's got a really, really live arm, very nice deep ball, which is a huge must in Aaron Roderick's offense. You have to be able to deliver the deep ball with accuracy down the field. It's a non-negotiable with what BYU is looking for from their quarterbacks, but they're also looking for guys who are athletic. And Noah Lugo, his offense that he runs in high school there at Eaton High School uses a lot of QB-designed runs, but is also his ability to improvise and use his feet. This is a kid who's got some absolute wheels. Now, the interesting part about all of this is he is from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, a place that BYU very much would like to sink their hooks into a little more with recruiting, but he recently, on June 18th, committed to UT San Antonio out of, obviously, they were Conference USA. Now they're moving over to the American Athletic Conference, if I recall correctly, if my conference realignment palooza is correct. But interesting that BYU is offering him just a couple of weeks after he committed to UTSA, but BYU is far and away his best offer. He's got offers, according to 24/7 Sports, from the likes of Army, Arkansas State, Bowling Green, and also we already talked about UTSA, where he is committed to. So BYU is his first Power 5 offer, and this will be interesting to see how BYU handles this. Does this mean that BYU is kind of jumping off the Maealiuaki bandwagon and thinking, hey, maybe he's going to look elsewhere? Obviously, most people think that it's kind of come down to Oklahoma State or BYU for Smith, but I don't think BYU's given up on Smith. I just think they may have a little bit of a contingency plan in place. Maybe telling Lugo, hey, if Maealiuaki Smith decides that we're not where he's going to go, we want you to come in and play for us. Like I said, I watched this film of Noah Lugo, and he fits exactly what BYU wants in their quarterbacks. Athletic, a guy who can absolutely run, but only runs if he has to, if that makes sense. Obviously, as I mentioned, his offense in high school, watching his huddle highlights, they have a lot of QB-designed runs, and obviously that is you're called to run. You call your number, you're going to run it. But at the same time, he improvises and uses his feet to get himself out of trouble, but also still keeping his eyes downfield to deliver the ball downfield. So I really like this offer. I think this might be an under-the-radar offer. He is a mid-3-star prospect per 24/7 Sports, rated an 85 on the 24/7's sports ratings. They don't have a composite rating for him because I guess the other recruiting services out there, On Three, Rivals, etc., have not rated him as a quarterback. But 24/7 Sports has him as the 74th best quarterback in the 2024 class, 179th in the state of Texas overall athlete. So I'm intrigued by this offer. Like I said, I don't think that he is by any means, speaking of Lugo, the pick in terms of the depth, or not the depth chart, the wish list for BYU. I think they still very much would like to have Maealiuaki Maealiuaki Smith in their program, but I think this indicates that BYU may be thinking, hey, we got to have a little bit of a contingency plan here. Now, they also had EJ Kamenong on the hook a little bit. He had decided he was going to visit BYU, and then BYU decided to cancel his visit last minute. Word on the street was that he just wasn't as athletic as BYU needed in their quarterbacks, or what they were looking for, I guess I should say. So I think Noah Lugo is very much the number 2 guy on the list right now for BYU. Now, some of you might be saying, well, Jake, they already brought in Enoch Watson. They already have Carson Suesue. Now, both of those players, while they are quarterbacks at the high school level, first off, Suesue, I don't think he's going to play quarterback at BYU. Could I be wrong about that? Yes, I could be, but I just don't see that happening. I just think his skill set is more as an athlete. And if you look at the positional ratings and everything for him on the various recruiting websites, they have him listed as an athlete. I think that he was looking at either, in my opinion, going to Utah State as a quarterback, where Utah State would let him play quarterback, or BYU at the Power 5 level, where they said, hey, you're going to be an athlete for us, and we'll find the best position for you. And if it is quarterback, so be it. So I don't think that Suesue ends up as a quarterback. And Enoch Watson, while he is a dynamic quarterback prospect, I love Enoch Watson out of the Arizona prep scene. He's a 2026 class guy, for the lack of a better term. He is going on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so he will not be enrolling this year. BYU is looking at the 2024 class, finding a guy, whether it's a Maealiuaki Smith or, in this case, Noah Lugo, who just recently received this offer. Either one of them could be that play-first quarterback who comes in right away and competes for time for BYU as soon as, I think Lugo mentioned that he's a December graduate, so he could be at school at BYU by the time January rolls around. So very interesting offer. I'm intrigued by his athleticism. Like I said, a live arm, the ability to deliver the deep ball with accuracy, but the best part is his other passes he was throwing. He threw some slant routes I saw on time, on point. So very intrigued by this offer. And like I said, by far, BYU being his only Power 5 offer has got to be at least somewhat intriguing to a young man like this. Now, UTSA is in his home state of Texas, albeit across the state in San Antonio from his home in Fort Worth. But we'll see how things shake out. And like I said, this very well may be BYU kind of just lining up a contingency plan. If Maealiuaki Smith decides that BYU's not where he's going to be, and he had a little bit of a little kerfuffle over the weekend, as many of you might have seen on social media, he posted some photos saying "Go Cougs" of his visit to BYU recently, and word on the street was that, just based on people I talked to at BYU, is that it was not a commitment. It was just him, I think, drumming up a little interest on social media, if you will. So we'll see where it all pans out, but interesting offer all the same. And the fun part about this is if Aaron Roderick wants to tag along to Fort Worth, he could bump into Noah Lugo. No, he's not going to do that. Let me be very clear about that. This is a quiet period on the recruiting calendar. The month of July is time for coaches to go out on vacation. I'd actually be very surprised if Aaron Roderick was anywhere near the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex this week. But tomorrow, I head out to Dallas, obviously getting ready for Big 12 Media Days. Cannot wait to be down there in Arlington. Going to be a scorcher, 100-plus degrees every single day I am in Texas, albeit with added humidity. So we're reaching near 100 here in Utah, but we don't have the humidity element near as much as Dallas will have. So going to be a hot one down there, but looking forward all the same to Big 12 Media Days. All right, coming up here in just a minute. We don't typically talk about cross-country, track and field that often on this podcast, but it made headline news across the country over the weekend. I guess I should say Saturday. Very crazy stuff. An incredible scene at the USA Track and Field Championships, and a BYU runner absolutely inspired all of us, and we'll talk about that coming up here in just a moment. Now, first, a word on our friends over at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs' goal here, my friends, is to make you look good. Bird Dogs' stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Who doesn't want to look sculpted, my friends? Best part is they do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better, and they fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton, but still look like those cotton shorts. They have what they call cloud knit fabric. It looks just like the khaki you'd be wearing, but stretches to give you that way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice all that movement. And the best part is they use anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that helps keep you cool and dry all day long. The best part is I love about this is Bird Dogs is going to hook you guys up. They want nothing more than for you guys to enjoy these shorts. They've sent me 2 pairs of them. I absolutely think they're awesome. I would encourage you guys to check them out. They also have given out, they call free gift tumblers. They're like a Yeti-style tumbler. They're giving those to you guys as well. So go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege to enter the promo code lockedoncollege for that free Yeti-style tumbler with every single order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Use that promo code lockedoncollege once again to get that free tumbler with your order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. Thank you for being everydayers with us here on the podcast. Hope you guys had a fantastic weekend out there wherever you might be. By the way, I mentioned this on Friday. I'm going to show this right now. This is a shameless plug, but if you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing it's a Sailor Coug head logo. A good friend of the podcast, Josh War, has started his own little business where he creates these signs. I know that Jeff Hansen from Give 'Em Hell Brigham has got the Beat Digger Coug. Josh reached out to me and said, hey, I want to get one of those. So I had him send me the Sailor Coug head here with the royal blue, and it's all made out of wood. That's the best part about this. This is full wood, full grain wood. You can look at that on the side. It's an absolutely incredible product. Josh is, like I said, a small business. If you want to support that and obviously get some BYU gear to hang on your wall, I'm going to get this hung somewhere here in my studio. Stay tuned for that. But got that in, and big thank you to Josh all the same as well. And I would encourage you guys to check him out at Josh_War on Twitter. It's WARR, 2 R's on his last name. If you want to get in touch with him, he'd love nothing more than to hook you guys up and obviously support his business if you're out there in Cougar Nation and want to get some awesome logo type stuff. And by the way, he can do custom stuff. I know that Give 'Em Hell Brigham, he had Jeff do a unique one for him. May have to have him do a Locked On Cougars one. Josh, let's talk. But nonetheless, big thank you for sending that over. All right, on to other news real quick, though. Crazy scenes at the USA Track and Field Championships this past weekend. I was absolutely floored when I saw this pop up Saturday night. Now, I need to acknowledge I did not see this live, but BYU runner Kenneth Rooks was running the 3,000-meter steeplechase at the USA Outdoor Track and Field Championships in Eugene, Oregon on Saturday evening. Now, I was on the radio doing RSL coverage, Real Salt Lake coverage for my station, the KSL Sports Zone, but as I was kind of streaming social media, all of a sudden I saw, the first person I saw post something was Robert Griffin III, obviously the former Baylor Heisman Trophy winner, now a commentator for both the NFL and college football for ESPN. And he said, Kenneth Rooks inspired me. He came back to win a race that he fell down. And I'm like, what is he talking about? So immediately I started looking around on Twitter, and I saw the video of this, and it was absolutely incredible. Kenneth Rooks fell down jumping over a barrier in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. Many of you know that the steeplechase involves it has a water element to it. You have to jump over these poles. It's a unique race in track and field. This guy already owns a national championship in the NCAA ranks in the steeplechase. He's an elite runner, speaking of Kenneth Rooks. But this race in particular, he fell over, dusted himself off. He was like 30 meters back or something like that, ends up rallying to win the race in a time of 8 minutes, 16 seconds, 8 minutes, 16.78 seconds, a personal best time. He beat out professional athletes in this event and finished ahead of Bernard Ketter, Isaac Updike, Mason Furlick, and Anthony Rotich. I don't necessarily know who these athletes are, but they are professionals. This is their job, is what they do. They run this race. He beat every single one of them. Of course, he's wearing his BYU gear. For him to have fallen, get up, and race the time of his life, to post the time of his life in that event to beat out professionals at the national championships, what an incredible story this was. Like I said, I don't spend a lot of time on track and field and cross-country stuff on this podcast because it doesn't necessarily move the needle. But if you watch that happen, if you have not seen it yet, I would assume you've seen it, most of you, by now on social media. It was ubiquitous. It felt like it was everywhere all of a sudden after it happened, but it was absolutely incredible. I went back actually and watched as much of that race as I could, and it's just absolutely insane what he did. And he talked afterwards how he had channeled, I think it was like Henry Marsh, if I recall correctly, one of the great steeplechase runners and distance runners in BYU track history, who had a national championship of his own. He said, I channeled that as I got myself back into the race. But you watch him in that final stanza, there's 3 other guys there racing alongside him, and he just pulls away down the stretch, had that extra kick down the stretch, and it was marvelous. Like I said, it was just absolutely marvelous, and it inspired me because this is a guy who had no business. He could have easily just said, you know what, let's just finish this race and see where things round out. But he's now a junior from Walla Walla, Washington. He's been a member of the track and field program at BYU since 2019. He has earned All-American honors 4 times, won the 2023 NCAA title in steeplechase. He also owns 3 top 10 records at BYU as well, and he did not give up in this race. And I like I said, I just wanted to give him a shout out. That was absolutely masterful. Like I said, if you have not seen it, just Google Kenneth Rooks and it'll pop up. It's everywhere now. It was just absolutely incredible scenes to watch him do his thing out there as a BYU athlete and beating out and out professionals in that event when he easily could have melded in and said, you know what, it's not my day. He he just dug deep. The grit was there, the determination, the tenacity. It was just, man. I don't know how many superlatives I can add on to this, but I was absolutely floored by the performance he put on, honestly. And like I said, I don't have much more to say than, hey, tip of the cap to you, Kenneth Rooks, and thank you for your inspiration. But this is a guy. If I'm advising him, I'd be considering turning pro right now. Now I know the coaches at BYU are like, hey, whoa, we want him back for another year if we can get him. But to do what he did, you got to guarantee he's got a number of sponsors out there. Nike probably chief among them, considering this was done at the quote-unquote Nike Invitational. The Eugene track complex there is where Nike sends their elite athletes to train by and large. So crazy scenes, and like I said, a tip of the cap to you, Kenneth Rooks. Your grit, your tenacity, your determination. It was really inspiring to watch it all unfold. And like I said, to fall, dust yourself off in the middle of a race, and to come back, fall behind everybody, because he was the only guy who ended up on the ground in that little bit of a scuffle that took place. It wasn't a scuffle. It was just there was a I guess a trip over that barrier, and ends up going down. And I was, man, what an incredible performance. All right, so I just want to give a shout out once again to you, Kenneth Rooks. That was awesome. Awesome scenes. Now, we got two other things we need to cover on today's show. Another look back at BYU and their independent history. A crazy game. Inspiring in and of itself. We'll talk about that next, as well as a new addition for BYU Golf that I think is indicative of that BYU football is not just adding athletes from the Power 5 ranks in terms of the transfer portal that would maybe not have considered BYU otherwise in terms of playing their sports. We'll talk about all that as we continue on in a moment right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Now, first, a word on our friends over at Perry Homes. We've been with us for a few months now, but whether you're looking for your first home or ready to upgrade to your dream home, my friends, Perry Homes has a house for you. For 50 years, Perry Homes has been Utah's premier home builder with communities throughout the state. They have many communities, home designs, and price points to help meet your needs. They want nothing more than to make sure you guys are having the perfect situation for you housing-wise if they can help you guys out with that. They've got beautiful communities in Davis, Salt Lake, Tooele, and Utah counties along the Wasatch Front, and they also have multiple communities in Washington County near St. George if you want to live down south. They offer over 50 unique home designs from ramblers to 2 stories to townhomes as well. They even have quick move-in homes available if you're ready to move now as well. So get on it. Visit PerryHomesUtah.com to see what's new in Utah's finest neighborhoods. That's PerryHomesUtah.com to learn more now. For 50 years, Utah has been coming home to Perry Homes. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars a part of your routine. Coming up on tomorrow's show, frankly, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of my thoughts going into Big 12 Media Day. And they may not necessarily have much basis in fact. Just kind of be my gut feeling on things going into that. And who knows what else might pop up in the news cycle for BYU. We'll also continue to look back at these BYU football games. Of course, we'll have live coverage for you guys from down there in Dallas and Arlington at AT&T Stadium for Media Days as well. I won't necessarily have all the equipment I have in my studio. I'm not taking the sign behind me here on YouTube with me to Dallas, but hey, we'll get as much audio and video to you guys as we can possibly get, and obviously stay tuned. We'll have, like I said, live coverage, a unique aspect of this podcast. I've been lucky enough to book this travel and take some time off of my other work to go and do this with the Locked On Podcast Network. Who knows, we may have like a roundtable event with it, so stay tuned all week long. We'll have plenty of coverage for you guys from Big 12 Media Days. All right, now a couple of notes before we go on today's show is congratulations to Simon Kwon. He's been added to the BYU men's golf roster for this upcoming season, joining Bruce Brockbank's squad. Now, Kwan is a former prep star here in the state of Utah, actually just recently won the Utah State Amateur, spent the last 2 years playing for the Cal Bears out in the Bay Area. He is a guy who's got 2 years of eligibility remaining and adds to an already incredible lineup for BYU. Now, the Cougars, with Zach Jones and now Simon Kwon, have the last 2 Utah State amateur champions on their roster coming into this season. Simon is very much a BYU legacy in many ways because his grandpa is the guy that you may know as, well, you may not know. You know him, Johnny Miller. Yeah, Johnny Miller is Simon Kwon's grandfather. Todd Miller, who is BYU's director of golf, essentially like the assistant or the associate head coach for BYU men's golf. That's his uncle. He's got 2 other uncles who have played for BYU. But here's the thing. The quote here was this. Coach Brockbank, this comes from Todd Miller. Coach Brockbank and I tried to recruit Simon out of high school, so it's nice to get a kid you already wanted through the transfer portal. His performance in the Utah State Amateur each of the last 2 years has been extremely impressive. It's always good to have someone on your team that feels comfortable in match play. Now, here's the thing. He was recruited by BYU, Utah, Pepperdine, USC, and Notre Dame. 4-time 6A All-State honoree, 2021 Utah High School Golfer, National Invitational medalist, 2020 Utah Junior Golf Association Player of the Year. This is a guy that I think bypassed BYU simply because BYU was not Power 5 at the time. Now BYU is at the Big 12 level, going to be playing against the likes of Oklahoma State, who's an absolute powerhouse in men's golf. They're not the only one. Texas is out there. They'll only be in for the 1 year, but still, there's so many of these programs in the Big 12 that have elite golf programs. UCF, I'm sure, has got a decent one, I would imagine, being down there in Orlando. This is going to give him an opportunity to compete at the level he wanted to compete at right away, but he can do it closer to home. So he's coming home to BYU, and like I said, this is not the only program that is going to benefit from BYU's Big 12 affiliation, but obviously a big addition for BYU men's golf, much like the situation we find in BYU football. Those 20 new additions to the BYU football roster, a lot of them, I don't know if to say a lot of them, but a handful of them at least, BYU's not Power 5. There's like, we're good. I'm going to look elsewhere. Power 5 affiliation is big time for BYU to have that moniker next to their name. And like I said, it adds Simon Kwon to an already very strong BYU men's golf program. Keep an eye on BYU men's golf. They can make another run at the national championship next year. They obviously made it to the regionals this year, did not make it to the final stages of the NCAA championship, but having a guy like Simon Kwon added to that roster only makes them that much better and that much of a bigger of a contender, if you will, when it comes to their chances in that event. All right, coming up, no, actually not coming up, we're going to talk about it right now. BYU looking back at another game in their 155 games of their independent history. We've gone through these. On Friday, we talked about the 3 games. There was 3 games in 2019 that were really losses due to injury. You can remember back, they lost Tyson Williams against Washington, absolutely stomped in that one. Then they go to USF, and Jaron Hall had BYU with a fourth quarter lead. Then he gets knocked out of the game. Baylor Romney has to come in and try and clean that up, and just couldn't get the job done. Oh, there should be Toledo in the middle. Toledo. Zach Wilson throws an interception, an ill-advised pass, chases down the defender to make the tackle, breaks his thumb. He's done for a while. So 2 of your starting quarterback and your starting running back are done for at least a significant period of time. The season, obviously, for Tyson Williams. And then the USF debacle with Jaron Hall being knocked out due to concussion after slamming his head on the turf down there at Raymond James Stadium. So BYU comes limping home to host a number 14 Boise State in the rain down there at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. Frankly, I was coming into this game thinking, okay, BYU's 2-4. Are they looking at maybe going back to what they were in 2019 when they just couldn't get out of their own way and obviously did not go on to make it to a bowl game? Well, BYU had so many questions coming into this game. We all learned the name Baylor Romney that week for most of us. I knew who Baylor was because I obviously was covering the team a little closer than most. But Baylor Romney, the third-string quarterback, a guy that probably was anticipating being a bench warmer most of his career at BYU, who knew what he planned on doing. But due to the injuries to both Jaron Hall and Zach Wilson, well, Baylor Romney, it's your game, son. You're going out there against the number 14 team in the country. Undefeated Boise State, 6-0 on the season coming in here. Now, Hank Bachmeier was unavailable in this game as well for Boise State, but trust me, the situation for BYU seemed that much more dire. Chase Cord was the quarterback for Boise State in this game. But what did Baylor Romney do? He came out and looked completely unfazed. Now, he is a guy that has just got this ability to not get too high or too low in any single situation, it feels like, because we saw that over the time he played at BYU. He ends in this game 15 of 26, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, both of them going to Matt Bushman, one of them on a flea flicker. And BYU just absolutely salted away a game that many thought they had no chance in and wins this game 28-25. Now, BYU was up 28-10 going into the fourth quarter. Boise State added 15 points late, made it a little bit nervy late, but remember, they had that old, they call it that rugby scrum formation. Austin Confensis came in at that quarterback position, got a fourth down conversion on a 4th and 1 late in that game, and then BYU runs out the clock to win this game. The Cougars won it despite running for just 121 yards in this game. Sione Finau, now transferred to Utah State, had 11 carries for 89 yards in this game, was actually very, very good at I think it was a career long for BYU. 46-yard run in this game that helped them win it. Matt Bushman, 5 receptions, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. absolutely masterful performance in this game. Now, the other thing about this game is there was a little bit of a transition that also happened with the offensive play calling duties after the debacle at USF, the 3-game losing streak. Well, some of you may know, some of you may not. It was at that point that full play calling duties went from offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes to Aaron Roderick. Now, Aaron Roderick was still the passing game coordinator. I call it a co-offensive coordinator, if you will, whatever it was. But he was given full play calling duties going into this game, and he called one heck of a game to get BYU this victory. It was a huge win for BYU, reinvigorated the season, absolutely flooring Boise State fans. Trust me, I've got a good friend who's a BSU fan who says that game was one of the games that's like one of the worst losses in Boise State history. And I would argue with that because there's some other ones out there, but it was just a crazy, crazy win. And the funny thing about this, do you remember who the leading tackler for BYU was in this game? Some guy named Tyler Algier actually led BYU in this game with 9 solo tackles in the game. Absolutely incredible performance. Obviously, we know the next 2 years after this, Algier would go on to be an absolute sensation at running back for BYU, but showed off his chops as a two-way player in many ways, leading BYU in tackles in this game. But it was a big win in retrospect for BYU because, like I said, it just completely reinvigorated the season, got them on a roll a little bit. And we'll talk tomorrow about a Utah State game that Jaron Hall returned for, and then BYU had, it was kind of a quarterback roulette, it felt like, the rest of the way in 2019. And we'll talk more about that on tomorrow's edition of the podcast. All right, that's going to do it for tonight and today, I guess I should say, of the podcast. Usually record these the night before. And big thank you to all of you, all the same, for you guys' support of the podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen today. And thank you to all of you, once again, the thousands of you who are everydayers with us here on the podcast. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday and get ready for some really, really fun coverage from down there in Arlington. Obviously getting ready for a big week ahead at Big 12 Media Days. And of course, stick with us all week long right here on Locked On Cougars.